So this is how liberty dies. With a disastrous Star Wars Guys podcast. No, I'm trying to set the standard for what today's podcast can be.
Yeah.
I set it really low. I will use words like disastrous, and then we
catastrophic.
it's the art of the deal. We set it low and then we go high. No, I don't. I don't know if that's the art of the deal. Then we go lower. They think we can't go, and then we find out there's quite frankly a base. There's a basement.
There's
And
a
we
lot
go
lower.
below
We
the
could go a lot
basement. We
lower.
go as low as you can go. Yeah. So
Welcome
Welcome
back
back.
to the Star Wars
Oh,
Guys podcast. We are excited to be back. We're excited to dive into some things. There's a lot of news that has come out just since
news.
the last week when we talked about some Daisy Ridley movie news. There's been some articles coming out. There's been some rumors and things. So
Andor season 2 release date.
Andor season 2.
I'll hit that
release
real
date.
quick, maybe before
Yep.
we dive in.
Andor
Do
season
that.
2 release date, which was
Andor season 2 release date officially coming on April 22nd, 2025.
April
Which,
22nd, 2025.
I'll be honest, when I saw the post of coming April 22nd, 2025, I actually thought, oh yeah, like that's not that far away. And also, like, I don't know when I thought it was coming, but I kind of
It's not too
hadn't
far
given
away.
I hadn't given a ton of thought. I mean, I hadn't given a ton of thought as to when season 2 would be coming. We knew that it was finished,
Yeah.
but with Skeleton Crew coming up, I've been thinking when Skeleton Crew, and then next year of just like, oh, what's going to be the movie news? What like there's a lot of stuff to talk about on the movie side of things. Kind of forgot that
Like,
oh yeah,
oh,
Andor
yeah.
season 2 is done and waiting for us.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
season 1 is
Andor season
fantastic.
2.
So I'm excited for that.
So
Can't
Andor
wait.
season 2's coming. We got Skeleton Crew coming next week. Really, next month. I mean, in
Next
a few
month,
weeks
yeah.
though. It's not even
a few
I know.
weeks, yeah.
beginning.
Yeah,
of the
we're
month,
already
right?
we're
Is it
middle
the 3rd?
November right now. It's on the 3rd. You have two
December
episodes.
3rd, we get 2 episodes,
Man,
which I
what a-
love the last trailer, so
Or
I'm
maybe
looking
two
forward
casts, 2 casts away.
Ooh,
Maybe one
yeah.
cast away.
to it. Yeah,
One Tom Hanks away.
One Tom Hanks away.
one Wilson away.
One Rita Wilson away.
Wilson.
I didn't realize that till just now.
Rita Wilson.
Wilson, I knew his wife, but I didn't think about the volleyball Wilson.
I just
Yeah.
recently.
Wow.
What's
Yeah.
funny is I recently heard. Oh, who was
Named it Wilson
Someone
because it was,
someone
Talk about that.
it was a
mentioned-
Wilson volleyball.
Someone
Yeah,
mentioned
yeah.
that to me though about like, but the reason he chose
That's
a
his
Wilson
wife.
volleyball is because his wife is Rita Wilson, and the thing he would have his connection to.
And he couldn't find the Rita.
He couldn't find the Rita volleyball.
volleyballs,
True.
He also
and he didn't marry a Spalding.
exactly.
So
Stalker.
actually, he married her so that in the movie he could use Wilson and it would
We'll
be
spend
his
this
wife.
whole podcast.
Wasn't that his thing in the? Wasn't
one
that
reason he
actually
got
his?
married to her.
Wasn't that his thing in the movie? He said, he's talking about like a Dr. Spalding, and he's talking to the. I think he actually is in the movie. He's talking to Wilson, and he's
This thing is so multi-level.
Your
We'll do a whole other cast
wait,
on the Easter eggs in,
On the Easter
Wait,
egg,
you're-
in the
Wilson and
1992
Spalding.
semi-hit Robert Zemeckis
Wait a
movie,
second.
Castaway.
Zemeckis is back in the.
What are the
Wait, your dentist name is Crentis?
what are the
Now
new
we're going Dwight Schrute here.
what's
Yeah.
the
Michael
new
Scott.
basketballs? The Evolutions or something?
Evolutions?
Evolutions.
Yeah,
Evolutions.
Evolutions. You
Just
got.
spend the whole
That's it.
podcast reenacting that with different basketballs.
If it was instead of a
Different
Wilson,
volleyball.
it
with
helps that
basketball
Wilson
names.
is also like a name. Like,
yeah.
but yeah, that would be Evolution. Spalding.
Anyway,
I love it.
Welcome back. We are
What are we
diving
talking
into
about?
things.
Well,
New potential. Well,
Oh,
new.
One last thing.
Okay,
yeah.
we'll never get to it.
That's
we,
it.
we will get to it. This will be
One
quick
more
though. But
thing.
the quick hitting stuff. One other thing.
Yeah.
5 years ago, 3 days ago, it was a 5-year anniversary of the
Go.
premiere of Mandalorian.
Yeah,
Really?
I'm
saw
not sure
that.
if it
What
feels like it's been 5
is
years
happening?
or does it
5
feel like it's
years.
been 10 years. Like I can't
5
tell. Like,
years.
5 years ago, we had never seen, other than the trailer, a moment of the Mandalorian, and now it is probably. And we'll get into it a little bit maybe in this story. It's certainly like one of the most profitable
Grogu for sure.
Grogu and Mando stuff in Target. I see more Grogu Mando than I do like Luke Skywalker.
Right.
Now, there's a reason why Luke Skywalker looks like a human.
And he's
like
dead.
so.
It's over.
It kind of is.
It's true. Darth Vader's dead too, but I still like Darth Vader. But yeah. So Mandalorian. I won't go into that further. Other than we liked Mando, and season whatever. We'll see if there's any more Mando coming outside of the movie. We got the movie coming, but 5 years. 5 years.
All right.
Yeah.
There you
I
go.
like
All
when
right.
somebody's like around, just don't bail them out. Just stare at them and
keep going.
see if they can get out of it.
I just saw George Lucas here. Thinking,
Anyway,
Mando's.
hello there, Anakin
It's awesome.
Skywalker in the chat. Welcome.
Anakin.
Hello there. We're gonna dive into some things. As always, we're your hosts, Mike,
Hello there.
myself, Nate. Hello there, and you know him well, Uncle.
How you doing?
I always love Nate's.
There you go.
Hello there. That's good. Hello there. He almost wanted to go somewhere else. He almost. They go blue. We go orange.
A lot of news. Some articles. We'll dive into it. Probably read a lot of this article, but new Star Wars trilogy in the works.
Simon Kinberg.
Lucasfilm.
Yes.
New Star Wars trilogy. Expected to be somewhat storyline based on an episode 10, 11, 12. We don't know if
Perhaps.
actually.
Although this article says that some insiders are saying that it is.
Yeah, we
10,
don't know
11,
if it'll
12. Others are
actually
saying
be
maybe
titled
not.
that.
Maybe not.
We don't know if it'll actually be titled
But a trilogy. Big
10, 11,
announcement.
12.
A trilogy.
If it'll actually be a continuation or if it'll be a separate thing, but a trilogy in the works nonetheless. So let's get into it.
So first off, before we get into the specifics of the article, because this came out 2 days ago, this article, which was not the announcement of the trilogy. That came out a couple days before that. But it was announced, I think, Screen Rant, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, the big trade. So we'll talk about it on here. It wasn't someone on their, in their basement making up a little blog post about
Or a podcast.
or on a podcast. But the announcement was not from Lucasfilm saying, hey, here's our next movies, but it was, hey, Variety can confirm that Lucasfilm has signed on Simon Kinberg, who, if you don't know who Simon Kinberg is, he's done a number of movies. He's also done a number of things, a number of different roles. Writer, producer, director, people that might know some of his work. He, for Star Wars purposes, he co-created Rebels with Dave Filoni. And I think they said he has writing credits on almost every episode. I know he has production and writing credits through all the way through, at least midway through season 4. I don't know if he ever had to leave before it was over, but he was not just like a create the idea and move type of thing. He actually was in the trenches making this with Filoni, so obviously he has deep ties to Lucasfilm. Actually, I think he created with Filoni and Carrie Beck, who both now have been elevated to 2 super higher ups at Lucasfilm. So he was there in kind of the trenches in this ground floor of the Disney starting era of Lucasfilm. And so he's someone they've put a lot of faith in the past, but he also has a lot of other credits. He's done a lot of the X-Men movies. I know he's executive producer. He's produced a lot of X-Men, the Deadpool movies, Deadpool and Wolverine. He wasn't the director. That was Sean Levy, but he was I think he was a producer on it.
Yeah.
He's directed. Now, he is not just like most directors. Not all of them are massive hits. I know he wrote and directed X-Men Dark Phoenix, which I know was kind of considered one of the maybe weaker X-Men movies, but he knows how to work inside a big franchise, which I think is something we've talked about recently, that you kind of need not just a Star Wars director who's like, okay, they've made a couple of great movies, they're a hot director, but you're stepping into something where you need to know, like, this isn't just free reign creative control.
There's a trust level.
Yeah.
That
you got to work
trust
inside
you,
the sandbox.
Maybe more than the idea. If they don't love the idea, but they know you, it carries some weight.
So, overall, this is not an announcement that's, Steven Spielberg is joining Star Wars or something like that. He's not a name like that. That's coming next week. But no, just overall, when you hear that Lucasfilm has signed on, and maybe the big thing is that with all of the things already announced in production that have not come out yet, movie-wise, how do we feel when we hear that they've also signed on someone now to start working on a trilogy? Does it feel like my initial reaction was kind of like, great, what year will that be? just because there's already 4 other movies, not just even the ones that have been
announced,
have come out. There's 4 other movies that they've had people out on stage for in the last few years that you would assume is going to come before a full trilogy, which is obviously the Mando movie, which is coming first, the Rey movie that they've been working on for a couple of years, what they called the standalone Rey movie at first. The New Jedi Order is what people are kind of referring to. Then you have the Filoni movie, which is supposed to be Thrawn, all that stuff tied in, maybe the end of the Mandoverse, that type of thing. And then you also have the Dawn of the Jedi Mangold movie that feel like they're all maybe closer to coming out, but none of them have come out or even have a definitive date for any of them except for Mando. So does this feel like it's way down the road? Are we excited about it? What's our overall reactions with a trilogy being in the works?
I mean, it's exciting because when I think of Star Wars, I think of trilogies. I mean, I think of 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 7, 8, 9. When I think of Star Wars on the big screen, obviously the Star Wars stories they've come out with Solo, Rogue One, I actually love those. But so I'm excited for any Star Wars movie. But I feel like the bread and butter has been in the trilogy aspect. Now with this, my first thoughts are the same thing. It's when is this going to come out? It's going to be,
and hopefully it does come out because obviously they've had a little rough
that
track
is true.
record.
My first thoughts are hopefully it actually comes to fruition, and then 2, when is that going to happen?
Yeah, this feels different to me. We've now had multiple writers floated for a Rey movie, and now it's an in-house kind of start of a Rey movie.
Yeah,
and that article we're going to be discussing, Rey is the we might say the maybe the most recent bankable, proven. The sequel trilogy, what, 2.5 or 3 billion total or something?
Yeah, I mean each one of them made over $1 billion, and I think Force Awakens made 2.
Yeah, so
2 billion,
so
like
4.
4, over 4,
and that's Rey driven, right?
Yeah.
So if you're gonna risk the biscuit, Rey feels like the one. The other ones feel like tangents right now. Let's tell this story or let's tell this story. But Rey feels like if I'm gonna,
she's the center of the trilogy for sure.
If I'm gonna make a movie and I'm gonna risk $200 million or $300 million, I'm gonna put it into somebody's hands who has helped us create $4 billion.
Yeah,
that feels like a sure bet.
Yeah,
and now when they're not sure what to make, it feels like
their only
where
choice.
we should, where we should land.
Yeah,
so it feels like that's
it makes
where we're
sense
going to. Feels good
from a financial standpoint. Definitely seems to make sense.
Which makes me think it's the most likely to happen.
Yeah, especially if they have her on board. I mean, if they've got her on board, you got.
So
which she's come out and saying that. Right. We also have Derpy in the chat says, "I just can't wait for Andor season 2." We were just talking about it. Can't wait for Andor season 2.
So let's dive into this. Let's dive into this article, this Variety article that came out, because then this article touches on a number of things. And I'll actually read a number of this real quick because I have screenshotted some of the main key points that I kind of want us to discuss a little bit, get our reaction to it. But also this suggests in here, and we'll get to it, that potentially the Rey, the Charmin Obaid Chinoy, who's directing the movie, which had Stephen Knight leave the project. We talked about that, which had Lindelof leave the project. That movie is not necessarily this. That these are two different things.
Yeah,
it's interesting that in this article it talks about there are multiple projects inside, or that insiders are saying that there are multiple projects inside Lucasfilm of the same character. And that maybe one has to happen before the other, or they'll have to choose one over the other. That there's multiple projects in development that they're thinking through that involve the same characters, which is interesting because it's like they're deciding which path to go. Because I know with some of these things,
what makes one a standalone.
Well, with some of these that they floated out,
right?
With some of these that they floated out. I know Lindelof wanted to do, and they've confirmed now that Lindelof was going to do an old Rey. Like Rey, and even in this they've talked about
mentor Rey.
Yeah, and people have talked about Rey being the Obi-Wan type character in maybe this future trilogy, which also makes you think, well, I wonder how old would she be? Does that have to come? Does a standalone Rey have to come first if they're going to do one of Daisy Ridley looking like herself right now, and then later she's maybe older or anything like that? But to get into the actual article, Hollywood Reporter. I'll just read. We got about 8 paragraphs here that I'm going to read, so we'll go through just the main things here. Forget the Death Star. The most coveted weapon in Star Wars movie arsenal is the character of Rey Skywalker. Since the November 7th reveal that Simon Kinberg had signed on to develop and write and produce a new Star Wars trilogy for Lucasfilm and Disney, debate has focused on whether or not it would be a continuation of the so-called 9-film Skywalker saga, tying it to the legacy of Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader, and storylines first laid out by George Lucas in 1977.
Darth Lucas.
The reason for the debate is that the new hoped-for trilogy would feature Rey in some form or fashion. Some fans have expressed criticism that Lucasfilm would return to the well to make episodes. I do want to put a pin in that. I want to get our reaction to if we have any opinion as to if episodes should continue. Well, how do we feel about there being episode 9, 10, 11, or 10, 11, 12, that type of thing? Beyond the Skywalker saga, or if that should just stay with the Skywalkers. Although technically Rey Skywalker. Rise of Skywalker had mixed reviews, audience polls, yada, yada, yada. But Rey, the scavenger turned Jedi, played by Daisy Ridley in the last 3 episode movies, is the key to the franchise's next turn. That potentially puts Kinberg's trilogy story development as early in its conceptual stages as it may be on a collision course with the Rey standalone movie that is actively in the works with director Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy. That feature revealed with fanfare in April at Celebration, yada, yada, yada. It has a number of new writers. A new writer search is currently underway, so it's unclear when that one would go forward. Perhaps that's why Lucasfilm was receptive to Kinberg's multi-story pitch, anything to move Rey forward. But it does engender rumors in the Star Wars underground of filmmakers jostling for characters. This is interesting. Quote, I feel like the new one, this is Ridley for her part, recently told the Hollywood Reporter, quote, I feel like the new ones will be so interesting. Time has passed and a lot has changed for me personally, so it'll be interesting to come back to someone who I know so well, but in such a different moment. While insiders dispute the notion that there is a battle for Rey, there definitely is internal deliberation within Lucasfilm as to what to do with the heir to the Skywalker saga next. She is the most valuable cinematic asset. In some ways, maybe the only one Star Wars has right now. One source close to the franchise tells the Hollywood Reporter, Pedro Pascal's Mandalorian and Yoda-like Grogu are Disney Plus creations and will... Oh, let me see. Oh, I just moved on.
Have their test.
Almost done. Yeah, it'll be tested.
Yet.
And the last couple things I wanted to get to here are... Yeah, so this is interesting. Okay. Star Wars, they're talking about how much money Star Wars has made, or Lucasfilm has made on Star Wars since the Disney acquisition. But it says, if the franchise looks forward in its canon timeline, all those beloved characters, Luke, Leia, Vader, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Han, are dead and have had their storylines wrapped up in prequels or spin-offs. Rey, created in the post-Lucas era, is arguably the only entity with currency on the big screen right now. Quote, the closet is a little bare, says another source. Lucasfilm directors are aware of what others are working on while others are not. They talk about how it's just unique working for Lucasfilm because there's all these different creators. And here's the last couple quotes I wanted to get to. This is what they say, how it's different. There's so much parallel going on. They're referring to their work on Star Wars. Nothing has been more, unlike Marvel or DC, the decades of stories propelling them forward, or even Harry Potter, with 7 fleshed-out books. Star Wars, at its core, has been the original George Lucas movies, and nothing has been codified or made more canonical in modern times than those 3 movies. To filmmakers and executives, the first trilogy is the Old Testament. Mm-hmm. Quote, "You're being asked to create the New Testament," adds one source who worked on previous movies, "and no one can agree on anything, and there's a lot of second guessing about meanings."
Pause real quick. That is what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
It does feel like, okay, this is sacred.
Mm-hmm.
This is the sacred old
sacred text.
This is the sacred Old Testament.
Read them, have you? Well, I.
Page turners, they were.
Pictures, they were not.
But it feels like that is like the George Lucas sacred, Old Testament, like you're saying, sacred Jedi text.
Right.
And then the New Testament, it does feel like there is this, like it's saying, there's internal debate, not necessarily bad things, but they're debating on like, well,
what was the meaning of all those too?
Yeah.
Like,
what's the
how
meaning
do
of
we
all
move
that?
forward?
What's the message moving forward? And now, what do we use to try to progress? Like, what is how do we take what's old, make something similar but new? It's like, how do we take what was, keep the same vibe and keep the same essentials of Star Wars, but it also feel very new and fresh? I'm sure that's got to be challenging.
Here's the last quote here to end the article. Another source familiar with the process is more business-minded, noting, quote, "Star Wars is a nostalgia-based enterprise, and they are running out of ways to create nostalgia." So, again, this is someone's opinion, but this is what they're saying. So I want us to talk about this. So the television side doesn't appear to have these same problems as several insiders note. That arm has been given a lot more freedom to expand Lucas's universe, which is why there's been a varied slate that runs, for better or worse in the eyes of fans. The gamut of Andor Season 2 arrives next April, to The Acolyte, as well as Ahsoka, creator Dave Filoni, yada, yada, yada. Adds an insider to make standalone movies or continuing the Skywalker saga in any form is a fundamental question the company faces as it tries to move forward.
Yeah. I think...
Thoughts on the article? There's a lot there.
My initial thoughts are like, so, but before getting into some of the more details of the article, my overall thoughts are Star Wars is faced with like it says, there's conflict because they're debating basically, do we bank on the nostalgia and continue to try and make that, successful moving forward? Or do we have to try to create our own nostalgia? Do we have to create something new that is good enough that we can bank on? This will be the new nostalgia moving forward. We'll have new characters. And I think we've seen a little bit of Disney Plus doing both. We've seen the nostalgia of episode 7, 8, 9 come with, yes, the main characters were new, but a big draw was the original 3 were back. Like, that was part of that, too, was like, we still had, like, we want to create something new, but let's still hold on to some pieces that we can bank on. And now it feels like this is the Daisy Ridley. Like, we can have a new trilogy where maybe the main focus is other characters, but now let's hold on to Daisy Ridley and keep some of that, of what we know has worked previously, and bring it forward.
Yeah.
So financially, I think that's makes sense. Somewhat, though, on my thoughts of what is a dilemma and what they struggle with, and maybe they're not as quick to jump into just like creating something new, or like there's a lot of Star Wars fans, we've even mentioned it, like not opposed to just jumping to a new time period, like jump to a new time period.
Right.
Now, I get the financial dilemma with that is we don't have a nostalgia factor really, because it'll all be new. It'll be new, so that it might. We don't have that Daisy Ridley, Luke Skywalker draw to it anymore. But we've seen them do this, like with Rogue One. They had Vader and that story, so there was a draw to that film. But because it did well, they're able to go make Andor and Andor be successful based off a character that's a brand new character that they created with Cassian Andor.
Yeah,
and so I think the possibility for them to do something that is more new and more fresh is there, but it is more risky because now you're banking on a new creation as opposed to. So I get the dilemma. I get some of the conflict on how best to move forward, but I think it can obviously be done. I mean, there's new movies and characters created all the time in different franchises that do well and some that don't. I don't know.
Uncle, what do you think of?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. What I think what I like a lot about that is it touches on the idea of the importance of the films. And we think about TV film, but really, apart from maybe Acolyte and Mando, everything else has been derivative of another already established movie.
True.
Yeah.
Even Andor.
Obi-Wan.
They've
Even
all come
Andor
from
came
a
from-
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, an Acolyte, you could argue, is based on all of the essences are already there. It's just a different version.
Even Ahsoka, technically, first you had Ahsoka in the actual movie that came out, which was the Clone Wars movie.
Yeah.
Is where she was introduced.
Ahsoka
and
might
then,
be
and then
but
Ahsoka, but
that's
then
an
hers are-
offshoot of Vader.
It's
That's
an
an
offshoot of
Anakin.
Anakin.
Yes,
Yeah.
totally.
So it is a
Yeah.
new character, but it's
But it's
within-
still it's because
But like
it's circling
Mando
around.
is
But
Mando's a new thing.
huge draw, and they knew it for Ahsoka with the marketing was Hayden Christensen's back.
right.
Like not just for like he's back. He's in this a
It
lot
connected
more than,
to
Mando's a separate thing for sure.
Yeah.
So it's an oddball, and how do you capture lightning? How do you do it?
yeah.
It was a miraculous that Empire actually worked.
Yeah.
It was.
That shouldn't have worked. You did it once. That's huge. Most of the time they go downhill. Godfather Part 2 may be another example.
Yeah.
But
Most
they
of
did
the time
Mando.
it doesn't.
No.
They did Mando, and they started Disney Plus. They literally launched the service with
Mhm.
Star Wars Draw, first ever TV
Yeah.
show with Mando, and it crushed it.
I would argue that Mando is derivative too, because everybody's watching that going, "Hey,
I mean,
it's a Boba Fett."
even that's
That's
what
what
Favreau.
we're-
Even
that's
Favreau
true.
openly
we're all
said.
thinking, "Oh, look, that's a Boba
That's
Fett
true.
character."
Favreau
That's
said
true.
he
Get to
wanted
see
to
all
do a
of his
Boba Fett,
adventures.
so I just
yeah,
made my Boba Fett.
I get
Yeah.
that. And even
But even
even
at its essence,
Baby Yoda.
even at its essence, and we joke about this, George Lucas, the hero's journey. The reality is that George Lucas was telling a proven story.
Yes.
He was
Yeah.
telling a story that's deep within our
yeah.
collective humanity.
Yeah.
Yes.
The hero's journey is a
He
story
said
that
it
we
was
all
something
relate.
new.
And it was just all of the plot points of the hero's journey. So it was
Yeah.
a proven story
Yeah.
set in a futuristic, ancient
Yes.
science
Yeah.
fiction based
Yeah.
story. When we don't follow that, it's hard, you're not certain
Yeah.
that there's anything proven. So
Yeah.
when you take away nostalgia, you introduce a new character, you introduce a story that may or may not follow something that's proven in a setting that people may or may not like. Star Wars ultimately isn't I don't think it's adored because it's space. I don't think it's adored because it's science fiction or because it's lightsabers or
Yeah.
because it's the Force. It was the essence of this young boy
Yeah.
being thrust into this galactic
Yes.
thing and overcoming against amazing odds.
Yeah.
That's what really made it
Yeah.
special. So
Yeah.
how do you duplicate that?
And I think
And Rey is the closest thing to it, I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
In the current setting.
what's funny
Yeah.
is as time has gone on, so when I think of the sequel trilogy, we know we've spoken on here a ton of about The Last Jedi, how much I really enjoy that movie, how much I really enjoy The Rise of Skywalker. There's highs and lows, and I think in each of those movies, there's stuff that I'm like, not my favorite moment.
Right, yeah.
Not my favorite writing here, a character choice, or even like some acting things. Like, that was supposed to. I don't always love
yeah.
Pose. I got a message for you about your mother. Like,
About your
okay,
mother.
I don't really, not my favorite. But
They fly now.
when I think of the actual kind of pure, what's funny is as much as I love The Last Jedi and I love Rise of Skywalker, when I think of kind of the pure magical, mystical, like innocence of Star Wars, I actually go back to Force Awakens as far as the new trilogy.
Yeah.
Because I think
agree.
of Luke, because I think of her in her Luke stage.
I do.
of
Yeah.
Farm boy.
That's right.
Like I actually enjoy. A lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to go to more of Luke as a Jedi Master or Rey as a Jedi Master," and that stuff I love. Like I would love that. But actually, my favorite iteration of Rey is probably the Force Awakens.
When
of,
the
of
galaxy
just innocent,
feels
doesn't
so
know-
big, like where she's like,
thrust
I don't
into a
even
story.
know what's out. I've never
she's
left. this
trying to
planet.
find her
It-
place. It's not
Yeah.
okay.
It taps
now
into
you're
that
making
part of us when there is a future that is you're a part of something big and it's wide open.
yeah,
Like,
your
Yeah.
future's
your
unknown.
future
Yeah.
You don't
is-
know what it's going to be.
You could be anything. It could be.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
And they're in
completely.
that moment
So
where
is
they
there
don't know.
room?
Yeah.
Is there room for a new trilogy?
on their actual release date schedule? I'm not sure.
I don't think so.
Yeah, seriously.
But
Is there room for a new trilogy starring a new Jedi character following hero journey, a Luke Skywalker, Rey hero's journey arc, where Rey does take the Obi-Wan role, and I think that's maybe what they're. Here's a guy who's similar. Maybe it's a 18-year-old, like taking the same.
His name is Luke.
Cookie cutter. He's out there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't start with looking at Rey. We start. It's just another, and now Luke. Daisy Ridley comes in as the mentor. I don't know.
It will take an incredibly bold decision to say we're going to make the same movie. We're going to make the same movie, but we're going to tell it in a different way. That episode 7 did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love that great story from Chuck Berry. Remember that story from Chuck Berry?
Yep.
We used to hire bands to come and play. He would just show up and play, and the band would come and be ready. And they showed up one time. Bruce Springsteen was backing him up. He was in the band. And they're like, where's Chuck? It's 2 minutes before the show. And he walks on stage. And they're like, are we going to rehearse? He goes, the songs are all the same. Just follow me. 1, 2. And he counted off and they just played. It's like they're all the same song, dude.
Yeah.
Chuck Berry, they're all the same song. So
Chuck, his cousin
Marvin Berry
is actually the one who
came up with that in
Marvin?
the 50s.
He came up with it. He actually
And Chuck doesn't know him very well. He had to enunciate his name so clearly to know that it was his cousin.
Yeah.
Marvin Berry,
your cousin?
Yeah, who I saw at the barbecue yesterday.
What are you talking
like
this?
This is
So
heavy,
are
Dad.
they going to be bold enough, or can they bring this story that we know works into a new trilogy?
And how do you do it in a new light that
do it?
doesn't feel repetitive for the third time?
It is a tough
second.
thing. So what I think of when I'm reading this article also is it's so easy. You get a bunch of people on the internet, and I get it. Like you get a bunch of people on the internet who say, I love Star Wars. I love this. I feel like we need to move on to a different time, or we need to do this, or okay, you're trying to just bank on these. You'll get like the cameo thing of like, oh, you're just using these cameos or this person because you know that's kind of the cheap way of this character's popular. Just go make your own thing. And it's so interesting. Like, go make your own thing that revolutionized film. Like, the thing you're comparing it to is like, go do the thing that's only been done one time in history of Hollywood. Saved Hollywood.
Reminds me of watching the Olympics, and they're flipping and twisting, and then they land. You're like, yeah, you gotta stick that landing.
Yeah.
Like, who are we to sit here and say you put your $200 million in, and then tell me what movie you should make?
She's terrible.
Did a triple back layout. Yes. Yeah, you got to stick the landing.
She wobbled at the end. You're like this. She's disgraced her country.
That's a 10th. She stepped out of bounds. My kid's like, they stepped out of bounds again. It's like they're flipping in the air. So if you gotta make the movie, it's a little different.
Yes.
Rather than sitting here with your Cheeto stained fingers complaining because the CGI looks cheap.
It's so much easier, and this goes in all walks of life. It's so much easier to, whether you want to call it Monday morning quarterback or whatever, it's so easy to point out what you think is wrong, but you never provide the solution.
When you have to come up with it.
Because if you're in charge,
or to not even make
Kathleen Kennedy's
to start it from scratch.
What Filoni Filoni and Kathy have to do on a daily basis, and Favreau and anyone who's now Simon Kinberg, they don't have to sit there and just go, oh, yeah, I'm just pointing out stuff that's wrong. It's like, no, they've pointed out stuff that's wrong. That's why we don't have a new movie out yet. Like, to their credit.
Yeah, true.
The reason we don't have a new movie yet is they're doing the stuff that you internet people are talking about, which is, that's not right. We don't want that to go forward. We don't want that. We think that's not what Star Wars is or where we want to go.
So they're like,
but they're trying to figure out what the solution is.
Yeah.
Where it's easy for someone on YouTube to go, well, this stinks and this stinks. Okay, but also, I'm not saying you're wrong. Like, there's stuff that hits me differently, but
and they're
it's
not
so much easier to be the
just
person
try
who
this
just
one
calls
for
stuff out.
Million.
Yeah,
just give it a try.
Coming up with the solution is way harder than pointing out problems.
That feels
there's
weird.
Always problems.
When you said that, it feels icky. It feels Darth-icky. Like, it just hit me because Picasso, if he's painting on live, you're like, what are you doing? You got to fix the faces. Look at the nose and everything. And he's like, you're right. And then he changes everything he paints forever.
Yeah.
Then we don't get any of that stuff.
Yeah,
we don't get any of those.
We would accidentally get two eyeballs right next to each other.
I mean, and people that look at
Can't
that
have
and
that.
say, well, that's how he sees.
seen
That's
that.
how he sees the world, and
Yeah.
that's the artistic side of it. Or
Yeah.
or Van Gogh, what are you doing with all these colors? Why do you have all these little colors mixed in? What is
Yeah.
all these little splotches of red and green and blue? Why are you doing that? That doesn't make sense. You know what? I never thought about that. I'm going to change that. And now Van Gogh's future becomes something else.
Yes.
Now,
Well, Van
granted,
Gogh's gonna get.
it doesn't cost $200 million to sit in a field and paint wheat, right?
Yeah.
You can do that for free.
It costs $200 million to buy a piece of his painting.
Yeah.
Now.
Yeah.
So granted, if Van Gogh is responsible for an entire, conglomerate machine,
Yes.
billion-dollar industry, he might listen to the people that buy it. But there's a part of me that wants the art to become the art. Like, let them,
Totally.
Yeah.
let them create it, and then.
So, do you
see
think
what
then?
happens.
Do you think then that there's a?
Let him
Well,
go.
let me ask.
He's struggling. Let him go. No,
Don't bail
just
out.
kidding.
Do you think Disney then or Lucasfilm essentially is trying to be they're painting the line of being too safe, or do you think they need to be more risky with like just starting something new, or do you think they're trying to they're struggling with capturing the nostalgia factor?
When you have nothing, it's easy to risk everything. That's what George had.
Yeah.
He had nothing. But now that you have something, it's very scary to put it all back out there again.
Yeah.
And that's where they are. I think they're trying to be
And unfortunately,
cautious.
with fan base being as loud and vocal as it is, too, they're afraid. I again, we're just speaking for them, but I would assume that there's some fear there of like they don't see them as two completely separate things. As far as they understand the reaction they've gotten to The Acolyte, and they've gotten to some of these other shows that they're not thinking like, oh yeah, well, we take risks on TV and then this in movies. Like, I think they are taking more risks in TV because there is like, if people don't like it, like 6 months later, it's gone. Like, not like gone, like we take it off, but like nobody's talking about The Acolyte anymore right now.
Right.
And even though we enjoyed a lot of that show, with the films, and you get a couple years in between, and it's not just Book of Boba Fett goes into this vault with these other shows like Clone Wars and this that kind of all have like its highs and lows and these different things. You're now adding what's going up next to Empire and what's going into this category of the films that they've made, and they've made some. So what I would love to see them do is, it's interesting because I'm looking at the poster above Uncle's head right now, Solo. They took a character that you would think is like, oh, it's a marketable character, except they really didn't use any of the stuff that was super marketable about it because, and I really like Solo. So what I'm saying is, I think there are risks. Like, I just want them to go for a little bit more of these, like give us an action adventure, fun type of a movie. And I think you can
so like
do
a
that.
standalone.
Well, I was gonna say I think you can do that even within a trilogy. So Empire and A New Hope are very different. Empire gets darker, and then Return of the Jedi gets a little bit like almost goofy in some points. But I think the first one is that whiz bang on the edge of your seat. A New Hope is new, boom, boom, boom. I get it. We can't recreate the newness, but I do think we can get a kind of buckle your seatbelts. This is a fun ride, while also introducing some very serious like themes and setting up. Okay, this character is going off on this journey. Where's it going to go? We start tying in new dark side users. We start tying in these different things, or even just new threats in the galaxy. Where is Rey at this point? But it's not a we start from this. I think sometimes they're so focused on, and I get it, like dotting every T, or dotting every I, crossing every T. They don't know how to write. Clearly, this is why the scripts are taking so long.
That was the problem with episode 9.
That's why the scripts are taking so long.
Crossing
Years.
the I's
Yes,
instead of
that's
dotting it.
that's why Stephen Knight eventually left.
Yeah.
He was like,
They kept dotting my
keep
T's.
dotting my T's and crossing my I's. I'm out.
I know how to write scripts.
I know how to. I'm out of here. Oh man.
Yeah, you're dotting your T's.
So they're trying.
Couple of points.
I feel like they're trying to get
T's
it
don't get
all
dotted.
so right, which I love. Like I do cherish it, and I don't want you to just throw anything out there.
Yeah.
But also, we've talked about before, I'm kind of on the edge now. Like, if I were to lean more of super restrictive or a little bit more freedom, I kind of would be like, hey, I'm a Star. Again, I understand other people won't be like this, but I'm a Star Wars fan. If you take a shot on a movie and it doesn't pan out, it's unfortunate. But I'd rather see a movie than not see a movie.
Yeah.
But the thing that excites me about a trilogy is, a trilogy where one person is behind a
Continuity with the story.
Yeah, is that I think that they can plan out.
That is one thing we should
They can
mention
plan out
too,
a future of a story and an arc, and from start to finish, just kind of like Tony Gilroy is with Andor, of he can say, okay, I'm doing 12 episodes of Andor season 1. I'm doing 12 episodes season 2. I'm done.
That's
I'm
the
moving
story.
on. That's
Yeah.
the story.
I like that.
And I think
Versus,
a lot of people
I think
that
a lot
had-
of Star Wars stuff is a little
We'll see
like
what happens.
Mando, and I love Mando, but Mando season 3 kind of
It
happens
starts
because
going
they
like
did like a
this.
pretty complete story arc through 2 seasons. Like Mando could have actually ended after 2 seasons almost because they
Yeah.
get Grogu to Luke.
Yeah.
But then after that, it's like, well, but then what else? And then what else?
Detailing.
And it's kind of hard when
It
you
doesn't
don't
have the
parameters.
continuity.
So
Hey, let's jump,
And I
jump
think
a
that
shark.
is one of the
Sounds
criticisms a lot of people had with 789 was that they feel and they can see that this story didn't maybe have the most
yeah, you can
continuity.
just
They're
and that's
trying
part
to
of
make
it,
like
but-
even Ryan Johnson's be like going in and being, I'm trying to make sense
Yeah.
of where I came from, and then JJ coming back and saying, okay, well, in Rise of Skywalker, now I'm trying to make sense of
while
the Last
also
Jedi.
having ideas of what he set up in his first movie.
Yeah,
so then you're like,
it
well,
makes
I kinda,
so
so it's just
so
hard. It's difficult. But I like
and
an
I
idea of
understand
someone
that. So
behind it.
having a new trilogy, say what you want, whether you want it to be Daisy Ridley and Rey, or you want it to be something completely different. I do think there is some people that have come out with criticisms of the last, the sequel trilogy that will come around to this, regardless of what the story is,
Mm-hmm.
coming in with the approach of, well, if we're having the same writer come in and be, on project for 3 and have a story, somewhat of an outline story beginning to end from the beginning,
Yeah.
it may seem to be a little more
Because
smooth.
George kind of did. There were details that weren't in there. That had
There were
to be
details,
changed.
yeah.
But he broke up the story into one. But it is kind of
Yeah.
arrogant to say, I'm going to make a trilogy. That's arrogant. Like,
No,
think
that's
about historically how many times people say, I'm going to make a trilogy.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
Once?
true.
Twice? Maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Because Lord of the Rings. But
Lord of the Rings.
So here-
that's already a trilogy.
yeah,
It's like they're
exactly.
making a movie about
and they
3
had
stories.
something to go off of.
Right.
Exactly.
Like,
So
that's the one
Star
thing with
Wars
Star Wars is
wasn't-
Star Wars isn't Marvel. Star Wars isn't Lord of
No.
the Rings.
Right.
You're not coming off of a ton of source material.
No.
You're
So this
making
is-
everything
yeah.
from
It's
scratch
It's
every
to say,
time.
we're going to make
so
a
this is
trilogy.
a little. So I do get a little nervous.
They don't even do
The
that for
sequels-
shows.
Yeah.
Prequels and the sequels are like
They're
the
not
only
even
two
doing
I
that
can
for
think
shows
of.
right now. They can't even
No.
say, I'm going to make 2 seasons.
No.
Right.
So here's something that I do think this is like wow, like kind of swinging for the fences, and now with signing. And now again, this I want people to always understand. There's a difference between the Hollywood Reporter announcing that a deal has been struck for a trilogy, and that they're actively pursuing that, versus Star Wars saying we're going to take this moment to tell you we are doing a trilogy because we want you to know about it, talk about it. It's coming soon. So, meaning it can always change behind the scenes as to people
Right.
sign on to multiple movie deals, and sometimes it ends up in 3 movies, sometimes end up in 1 movie, 2 movies, whatever. But it is a little nerve-wracking when they haven't had a movie since 2019 and currently are in a tumultuous kind of they're trying to figure out the movie side of things. They have this long list of projects they've announced, and then they think, and again, I'm not criticizing. I actually am excited about it, but then they think, actually, what we need to do is commit to more
Of what we've been doing.
of one person, and hopefully the always, like we said, the hard thing about a trilogy is hopefully the first one hits, because if it doesn't, Kevin Costner, You didn't think this was coming, Kevin Costner. But Yellowstone.
No, I did.
I thought that was
the
coming.
show Yellowstone is on TV right now.
Yep.
It just came back out, and I've watched Yellowstone and really enjoy it. And Kevin Costner was the lead of Yellowstone, and they had some behind the scenes drama and stuff, mainly revolving around the fact that he has started his own movie production company, and he has been self-financing these Western movies. One of them is called Horizon, and he has filmed a number of these movies, and it led to this conflict of he basically was saying, like, I want to go do these movies. Now I've been on Yellowstone for a number of years. I'm ready to be off of the show, but he's also the lead. Yeah. And it came into this conflict of Yellowstone is like one of the biggest shows on TV when it's on, and he's the lead of the show, but they got into the schedule conflict of he's like, I can only work like 1 day a week on Yellowstone, and they're like, but you're the lead, we can't do that. And he's like, but I have to go do these movies that I want to do. And what it ended up leading to was kind of a nasty split of, like, it was like pretty kind of heated a little bit behind the scenes for a while. And then